Recent months have uncovered numerous violations or alleged violations and blatant disregard, I would say, for not only the Arizona revised statutes, the state bar rules of professional conduct, but also the Arizona state constitution and the Bill of Rights at the federal level. Title 16, I won't rehash everything, but we are all too well and familiar with what took place during the election season and the violations thereof. City clerk is our elections officer. Nothing was done with the violations, and the city attorney did nothing as far as that. Title 9 and 38 have conflict of interest pieces of information, and it was deemed that there was a conflict of interest. Title 39, there are numerous public records requests that I have open right now that are, quote, pending legal review that I am entitled to request.
I've got to interrupt you here because...
Okay, are you going to stop the timer?
This is the public meeting forum that you agree to when you speak, and I want to read this to you, that there are oral communications during the city council meeting may not be used to lodge charges or complaints against any employee of the city or members of the body, regardless of whether such person is identified in the presentation by the name or by any other reference that tends to identify him or her.
That's all fine, well and good, but that's a violation of my First Amendment rights.
Yeah, so that's, well, this is your warning, okay?
Warning for what?
A warning for attacking the city attorney personally.
This is all factual information.
It doesn't matter.
You're violating my First Amendment rights.
This is what you agreed to when you first speaking. This is the form.
It is unconstitutional, Mayor Hall.
Well, it's not unconstitutional.
It is.
And if you're
the Supreme Court has upheld. I could get up here and I could swear at you for 3 straight minutes, and it is protected speech by the Supreme Court. It is.
No, you can't.
Why don't you look at case law?
No, you can't.
I can.
So if you want to be
also the chair is engaged in debate. So point of order.
Do you want to be escorted out of here? Do you want to be escorted out of here?
You're violating my First Amendment rights.
Talking.
You are violating my First Amendment rights.
That's your opinion.
It's not a matter of opinion.
Do you want to be escorted out, Ms. Massey? Because that's what's going to happen. And it's going to happen in the future also. Anytime you attack
That's why you changed the rules.
Or any
That's why you changed the rules.
This has been on the back of this form.
I understand, Mayor Hall, but that is completely unconstitutional.
No, it's
You're
not.
Also engaging in debate, and so you should actually be yielding the floor to somebody else managing.
Chief, could you have somebody come down here and escort Ms. Massey out?
Really, is that necessary?
Chamber? Yes, I think it is.
In front of my 10-year-old daughter, you're going to escort me out for expressing my First Amendment rights.
She can go with you.
I'm not leaving.
Well,
Need you to step out with me.
I'm expressing my first. Do not touch me. Do not put your hands on me.
Need you to step out with me.
Do not put your hands on me.
Come on out.
Do not put your hands on me.
Come out with me now before you get arrested. Do you understand?
Are you detaining me?
Yes.
Why am I being detained? Under what charges? Under what charges?
okay, so
I have personal property.
Hold on.
You cannot touch me.
Yeah, I know. She can go out there. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to go into E-session.
Motion to go into E-session?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We're going into E-session.
Two or three people. You pontificate about a free press. You pontificate about a free press. You are hurting me. You are hurting me. You are hurting me. I am asking questions after being told by Matt Miller that he will not answer my questions until I'm asking questions. Wasn't the point of the May 31st statement to block the ICJ orders? You blocked the ICJ orders.
Please, sir, respect the process.
Respect the process. Respect the process. While everybody from Amnesty International to the ICJ is saying that Israel's doing genocide and extermination, and you're telling me to respect the process. Criminal, why aren't you in The Hague?
Protesters continue to fill the streets in some cities. Police officers have come under scrutiny for arresting demonstrators. Could this violate the First Amendment? Megan Yoder takes a look at how the Constitution protects protesters.
The First Amendment protects religious practice, speech, the press, and the right to assemble and petition the government. So generally, yes, it protects protesters, but there's still restrictions on how you can express yourself. For example, protesters have the most rights on public land, like sidewalks and parks. So this would include places like Lafayette Square or the National Mall. But if you assemble on private property without the permission of the landowner, that would be considered trespassing and is not protected. If protesters plan to shut down the streets, in most places they need a permit. Many of the arrests we've seen lately also occur when protesters are out past a city's curfew. After curfew, law enforcement can declare a demonstration an unlawful assembly and begin arresting people. Also, rioting, threats, and damage to property are not protected forms of free speech, and therefore are not protected by the First Amendment. But it's worth noting, just because police can legally arrest people who breach these guidelines doesn't mean it's the most prudent course of action.
The Western culture and values that brought forth Christianity in the founding documents are being called evil and racist.
You're not the captain, we're your bosses, and God willing, we'll return most of you to the private sector very soon.
I'm reminded of the tyranny of communist China, where your money is legally stolen and then used in government schools, not public schools. These are not public schools, these are government schools, like here, to indoctrinate children against their parents.
My child is not oppressed, and don't assume that. As long as you Marxists push your unconstitutional agenda on my child, she will not be returning back to Loudoun County schools.
So the school board didn't want to hear it. They're as out of touch as most of our institutions. They just didn't want to hear it. So they had the meeting declared an unlawful assembly. One parent called Jod Tigges, a man from the community, was arrested. Watch this.
You are fascist, and the county taxpayer pays your salary.
You guys are actually supporting the suppression of people's rights.
John, are you refusing to leave at this time?
Yes, I'm refusing to leave.
Kids too. Deputies, please arrest this individual for trespassing.
Now, you would call what the state is doing viewpoint discrimination. I mean, you've said that a few times, but would you come right out and actually say that's what the state is doing?
That is what the state's doing, and it's a legal term of art, I suppose. The layperson may not recognize the term, but basically what it means is, what it implies, that the government, the state, cannot discriminate against particular viewpoints, certainly not religious viewpoints. And we've said this overarching principle that's been in place forever in our jurisprudence, in our constitutional tradition, that religious groups and ideas and organizations can't be treated with hostility by the government. And in effect, that's what we have here, and that's why we have to get it straightened out.
We have uncovered a new way to approach FOIAs. Folks, this is groundbreaking. It involves the violation of the First Amendment and what we've been talking about, this two systems of justice, viewpoint discrimination. Because if you can show, and in this matter involving Rick Grinnell, we can directly, that when one group asked for Rick's information when he was Director of National Intelligence. All they said was all of it, emails and text. And they got him within a year, no lawsuit. When we asked for the current ODNI's information, and you say all, we hear nothing for 2 years. They would usually then write back, when you file a lawsuit, you can't be that broad. Well, then we're going to point to the other one and say, well, why didn't you do that then? And by the way, this delay that you have made us incur is a violation of the First Amendment. So
isn't part of free speech or the First Amendment the right of redress?
That is correct, to petition the government, exactly.
And petitioning the government has been widely considered to be including to make cases before the federal court when you believe that the Constitution is being violated or your free speech is being violated or due process is being violated. Those are all consistent with what we would broadly say is the First Amendment.
Correct.
And for the record, the First Amendment, incredibly short, and if we read it in its purest sense, you would say that Congress shall make no laws respecting. And that because it only says Congress, that it doesn't apply to anyone else. Have our courts, including our Supreme Court under 200 plus years, have they ever considered it that narrow?
No, Congressman.
So isn't it true that they basically consider censorship of free speech very broadly to include intimidation by federal, state, or local government authorities? Isn't that right?
Yes, intimidation and retaliation, among many other things.
So what was earlier called suggestion by the federal government, the vast power of the federal government, which could even include the IRS, one might think in this case, that kind of suggestion has historically been viewed as intimidation consistent with this relatively short statement about our right of free speech.
That's exactly right. There's overwhelming evidence in our case that contradicts the notion that these were mere suggestions from federal officials. It's completely factually baseless to state that.
So you earlier testified that the vast majority of this was one-sided and came from government officials who wanted to take down things which disagreed with the government in place at that time, which happened to be the government of Joe Biden, correct?
Correct.
So what we really have here is something similar to historically Nixon v. the IRS, if you remember that era, and that's not the actual case name, but what you have is the power of the executive branch being used to reduce the opposition or the redress or the free speech or the communication of people who might disagree with what was being put out by the executive branch, which happened to be a Democrat president.
That's exactly right. We see not just interference with free speech, but interference with the attempts to organize for political advocacy.
Now, is this an opinion, or are these indisputable facts based on the literally millions of events?
Yeah, the evidence is overwhelming, and we've submitted extensive evidence to the subcommittee.
They say that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So to illustrate why this ordinance 2239 is wrong, I'm holding up an American flag to represent the constitutional values that we should be loyal to.
Warning, and if you continue, I will have to forfeit. You'll have to forfeit your time.
Well,
your time.
It's my constitution. It's my constitutional right to do this. If you get sued, you will lose. My suggestion to you is that you get a second opinion from competent counsel because you are wrong. You are interfering with the autonomous meeting by interfering with the right to speech of a member of the public. You're interfering with free speech, and it should stop now. I'd like to continue.
They didn't pass the law yet.
This is an arbitrary.
If he doesn't sit down.
This is an arbitrary capricious thing.
His time is forfeited.
And it violates the law. Your time should be forfeited. Your position should be forfeited. By your actions, you forfeited your right to preside over this meeting.
Please have it in the room. Room.
Shame on you.